Hey everyone, I'm your author June. Before we get started, I really would appreciate it if everyone could hit the subscribe button. It helps me grow the channel, and I would love for all of you to come on this journey with me, as a family. Now, let's get into the story. Let me know if you enjoy. Heat shimmered above the parched earth, twisting the horizon into a liquid mirage. Dust devils danced across the plains like mischievous spirits, kicking up red dirt that stained the sky a hazy orange. The air hung thick and heavy, promising a storm that wouldn't break, just linger, suffocating everything beneath its oppressive weight. In the distance, a lone rider appeared, a dark silhouette against the bleached landscape. The horse moved at a punishing pace, its gait uneven, labored. Noah Creed stood on the boardwalk outside his office, the midday sun beating down on the brim of his hat. He watched the approaching figure with a practiced eye, assessing the situation before it reached him. Years of shepherding Silver Creek had taught him to anticipate trouble, to see the storm clouds gathering on the horizon long before they broke. He leaned against the sturdy wooden post, arms crossed, a silent sentinel. The rider drew closer, the details sharpening with each stride. It was a woman, her figure slumped in the saddle. Her clothes he frowned, recognizing the telltale shimmer of satin. Even through the grime, a wedding dress. Torn, ripped, and caked with dust, but undeniably a wedding dress. He pushed himself off the post, his boots hitting the wooden planks with a solid thud. He moved towards the edge of the boardwalk, his hand instinctively resting on the butt of his revolver. Not in aggression, but in readiness. The horse stumbled as it reached the edge of town, its legs buckling. The woman cried out, a sound muffled by the distance, and then she was falling, a pale heap collapsing onto the dusty ground. Noah broke into a run. He reached her side in seconds, kneeling beside the fallen figure. The horse stood panting, its flanks heaving, its eyes wide with exhaustion and fear. He ignored the animal, focusing on the woman. She was unconscious, her face buried in the dirt. He gently turned her over, careful not to jostle her too much. Her face was pale, streaked with dirt and sweat. A dark bruise bloomed on her temple. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, revealing a glimpse of delicate skin. He checked for a pulse, finding it weak but steady. Relief washed over him, a subtle easing of the tension in his shoulders. He lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she was, and carried her into his office. He laid her on the cot in the back room, the one he used for emergencies and the occasional drunk who needed a place to sleep it off. He dampened a cloth with cool water and gently cleaned her face, revealing her features. She was younger than he'd initially thought, barely more than a girl, with high cheekbones and a delicate jawline. Even covered in grime, she possessed a striking beauty, a fragile strength that tugged at something deep inside him. Her eyelids fluttered. She groaned softly, her brow furrowing in pain. "Barlow," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "He can't." Noah leaned closer. "He can't what?" he asked, his voice low and soothing. Her eyes snapped open, wide and filled with terror. She stared up at him, her gaze unfocused, disoriented. Where am I?" "You're in Silver Creek," he said, his voice calm. "You're safe." Her eyes darted around the room, taking in the simple furnishings, the rough-hewn walls, the faded posters tacked to the wall. "Safe?" she repeated, her voice laced with disbelief. "There's nowhere safe." He studied her face, searching for clues, for answers. He saw the fear, raw and palpable, but he also saw something else, a spark of defiance, a refusal to be broken. It was in the set of her jaw, the way her chin tilted upward, the fire that flickered in her eyes, even through the haze of pain and exhaustion. "Who is Barlow?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. She flinched at the name, as if struck. A tremor ran through her body. He's the devil," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "He wants me. He wants everything." Noah remained silent, letting her words hang in the air. He knew better than to push too hard, too soon. He'd seen that look in people's eyes before, the haunted gaze of someone running from something terrible. He stood up and walked to the doorway, looking out at the dusty street. The sun was still blazing, the air still thick with heat. He could feel the weight of his responsibility, the burden of keeping his town safe, of protecting its people from the darkness that lurked just beyond the horizon. He turned back to the woman on the cot. She was watching him, her eyes narrowed, assessing him. He knew what she saw. A man hardened by the sun and the dust. A man who lived by a code. A man who believed in law and order. But he also knew that she saw something else, something he tried to keep hidden. A flicker of compassion, a willingness to help, a deep-seated need to protect the innocent. "I'm Sheriff Noah Creed," he said, his voice steady. "You're under my protection now." Her lips twisted into a wry smile. "Sheriff," she said, her voice tinged with skepticism. "I hope you're as good as your word." She reached up to touch the bruise on her temple, wincing. "Because Barlow, he doesn't give up easily." Noah kept a close watch as she entered, each step measured, as if anticipating the floorboards to shriek her arrival. Her slumped posture betrayed a weariness that transcended mere physical drain, a deep-rooted exhaustion etched by trials far exceeding the journey. "Upstairs, there's a spare room," he offered, his voice raspier than intended. "Not exactly luxurious, but the roof is sound, and the latch secures." Cassidy pivoted, her gaze sharp and dissecting. "And what does Sheriff Creed expect in exchange for his kindness?" He met her scrutiny head-on. "Just the truth, and maybe a bit of serenity for my town." He detected a flicker of distrust in her features, a guardedness that wouldn't yield easily. "Truth is a privilege I can ill afford just now, Sheriff." She raked a hand through her matted hair, liberating dust motes that danced in the dim light. "But I'm grateful for shelter." Noah inclined his head, gesturing her onward. "Martha will bring water and perhaps some clean clothes. She's got a spirit of gold, despite her gruff exterior." As if summoned, a robust woman, flour dusting her apron, emerged from the kitchen, her eyes widening at Cassidy's dilapidated state. "Good heavens, child, what befell you?" Martha hurried forward, brimming with concern. "Never mind, don't speak of it now. Let's get you presentable. Noah, you be off. Attend to whatever sheriffing needs doing. I'll tend to this one." Cassidy winced at Martha's touch, but swiftly composed herself, offering a faint, tired smile. "Thank you," she rasped, the word like a rusty hinge. Noah followed them with his gaze as they ascended the stairs, the soft cadence of Martha's soothing words a strange counterpoint to the unease tightening his gut. He drifted to the window, gazing out at the dusk-tinged street. Silver Creek was typically tranquil, a refuge from the bordering territory's turmoil, yet he knew such tranquility could be shattered in a breath, and something warned him that Cassidy Holt was a walking tempest, carrying trouble like a shadow. He turned back to his desk, the paperwork swimming before his eyes. He couldn't dispel the image of her face, the defiant lift of her chin, the haunted depths of her gaze. She was fleeing something, that much was certain. But what spectre pursued her? And how far would it reach? His oath was to safeguard his town, to uphold the law's dictates. Yet something about Cassidy sparked a different sort of protectiveness, a visceral urge to shield her from whatever malevolence trailed her. He slumped into his chair, the worn leather groaning beneath him. He had always valued his ability to separate sentiment from duty, to see matters in stark terms. But Cassidy was a vibrant stain in his meticulously ordered existence, a challenge to his steadfast beliefs. Was he prepared to jeopardize everything he had built for a woman he scarcely knew? The answer, he realized with a start, was anything that strayed forward. Upstairs, Cassidy stood in the small, sparsely appointed room, the water Martha had provided emitting faint tendrils of steam in a cracked porcelain bowl. She shed the tattered remains of her wedding gown, the fabric stiff with grime and perspiration. The sight of the rent lace rekindled a surge of anger, a simmering fury threatening to engulf her. "He ain't worth it, dearie," Martha said gently, placing a faded cotton dress on the bed. "Let it go." Cassidy considered the dress, a simple calico print, and felt a peculiar easing. It was a world apart from the extravagant gown she had been forced to wear, a symbol of all she was desperately escaping. "Thank you, Martha," she whispered, her voice cracking, "for everything." As she bathed, the dirt of the journey slowly dissipating, she couldn't suppress the question of what she had stumbled into. Silver Creek felt like a haven, a place to draw breath, but she knew that Barlow wouldn't relent easily. He would pursue her relentlessly, regardless of where she sought refuge. And she couldn't shake the premonition that she had brought peril to this peaceful town, to the kindly sheriff who had offered her haven. Later, once Martha had departed, Cassidy sat on the bed's edge, the room's silence pressing down. She gazed out the window at the star-dusted heavens, the vastness of the landscape underscoring her own vulnerability. She was alone, hunted, and adrift as to what awaited. Yet beneath the dread, a spark of hope persisted. She had escaped. She tasted freedom, and she would resort to any means to maintain it. Downstairs, Noah poured a measure of whiskey, the amber liquid swirling in the subdued light. He took a deep draught, the burn soothing the knot in his stomach. He knew he ought to be patrolling the town, ensuring its security. But he couldn't shake the notion that the true menace wasn't lurking in Silver Creek's shadows, but slumbering upstairs, haunted by demons he could scarcely fathom. He pondered his own past, the missteps he had committed, the scars he bore. He had come to Silver Creek seeking absolution, a chance to rebuild his shattered life. And now, a woman with eyes like storm clouds and a spirit of defiance had entered his town, compelling him to confront the darkness he had desperately sought to bury. He drained his whiskey, the glass heavy in his grip. He couldn't predict what tomorrow might hold, but he sensed that his life had irrevocably altered. He had offered Cassidy Holt sanctuary, yet he had also ushered in a world of uncertainty, a world where duty and longing collided, and where the distinction between right and wrong blurred amidst the complexities of the human beret. Heart. He placed the glass down with a decisive click, the sound reverberating in the night's stillness. He would safeguard her, he resolved, even if it meant risking everything he held dear. He had pledged his word, and he intended to honor it, even if it resulted in his own ruin. The shadow of Barlow whirlwinds spiraled, dancing toward Silver Creek, omens of a tempest brewing not from storm clouds, but along the parched horizon. Noah Creed, propped against the sheriff's office porch, narrowed his eyes against the shimmering heat haze. 3 figures on horseback, stark silhouettes against the sun-baked land, advanced with a steady, implacable rhythm. A chill wormed its way into his gut. He knew exactly who they were. Inside, Cassidy scrubbed at the counter, the repetitive motion a flimsy shield against the palpable tension she radiated. She'd been unusually quiet this morning, her brief slumber offering little relief from the haunted look in her eyes. He'd offered her the cot in the back room, but she'd insisted on sleeping near the door, a silent testament to her ingrained need for escape. "Riders approaching," Noah murmured. He watched her spine stiffen, the scrubbing faltering almost imperceptibly before resuming with frantic energy. "Barlow's men?" she breathed, her voice a bare thread. Noah confirmed with a nod, never taking his gaze from the approaching figures. Seems being jilted at the altar isn't something he takes lightly. He pushed away from the railing, the aged wood groaning in protest. "Stay put. I'll handle this." Cassidy slammed the rag onto the counter. The sharp sound echoed in the stillness. "Handle it how, Sheriff? By offering me up like a prize-winning heifer at the county fair?" A spark ignited in her eyes, the vulnerability of the previous night eclipsed by a fierce, raw spirit. "By upholding the law," Noah responded, his tone resolute. "They haven't broken any laws yet. I'll hear them out." He saw the disbelief shimmering in her gaze, the naked fear she struggled to contain. Softening his tone, he added, "I'm not going to let anything happen to you, Cassidy." He wasn't certain if the reassurance was meant for her or for himself. The riders halted before the office, their mounts snorting and stamping in the swirling grit. The leader, a stout man distinguished by a prominent scar cleaving his left eyebrow, dismounted with the fluid grace of a seasoned rider. The other two remained astride, hands hovering near their revolvers. Noah descended from the supperca porch, his hand instinctively drifting toward the Colt Peacemaker holstered at his hip. "Afternoon, gentlemen. What brings you to Silver Creek?" "We're looking for someone," the leader rasped, his voice like gravel grinding on stone. "A woman. Answers to the name of Cassidy Holt." His gaze swept the office interior, lingering pointedly on the window where Cassidy stood, a silent, defiant specter in the shadows. "I know several women by that name in town," Noah replied, keeping his tone even. "You'll have to be more specific." The leader's lips twisted into a sneer. "Don't insult my intelligence." "Sheriff, we know she's in here. Saw her ride in. Yes, what belongs to us." "I don't belong to anyone," Cassidy declared, her voice cutting through the air with unexpected strength. She emerged onto the porch, chin lifted high, the disheveled wedding gown a potent symbol of her rebellion. The leader's eyes narrowed, locked on Cassidy. "Cassidy, darling," he purred, his voice a honeyed lie. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. Just come with us. Barlow's waiting." "I'd sooner face a firing squad," Cassidy shot back, her eyes blazing with defiance. Noah moved forward, positioning himself between Cassidy and the riders. "She's under my protection. If Barlow wants her, he can come and fetch her himself, and he'll do it within the boundaries of the law." "Legally?" the leader scoffed. "Barlow doesn't abide by your petty laws, Sheriff. He makes his own." "Not within my jurisdiction," Noah stated, his voice hardening. "In Silver Creek, we follow the rule of law. I suggest you turn those horses around and ride out of here before you find yourselves in violation of it yourselves." The leader hesitated, his gaze darting between Noah and Cassidy. He knew he was currently outmatched. However, he also knew the wrath Barlow would unleash for failure. "This isn't finished, Sheriff." He spat, menace dripping from his words. "We will be back." With a final predatory look at Cassidy, he turned and swung into the saddle. He and his men departed, leaving a plume of dust hanging in the still air. Townspeople, who had observed the confrontation through the slits of drawn curtains and tightly shut doors, began to trickle from their homes, their faces etched with anxiety. Sarah Miller, proprietress of the general store, approached Noah, her brow furrowed with concern. "Sheriff, who were those men? And what did they want with that girl?" "They were looking for Cassidy," Noah said, his voice grave. "They're employed by a man named Barlow. Seems she's eloped to avoid him." "Barlow?" Sarah gasped, covering her mouth with a trembling hand. "Not Jeremiah Barlow, the cattle kingpin?" Noah nodded grimly. "The same. And he's not one to let go easily." A wave of unease washed over the gathering townsfolk. Jeremiah Barlow held considerable sway, coupled with a fearsome reputation. Nobody in Pote, Silver Creek, wanted to provoke him. "What are we going to do, Sheriff?" Tom Evans, the local blacksmith, questioned, his voice laced with trepidation. "We can't possibly stand against Barlow and his crew." Noah surveyed the faces of the townsfolk, their fear and doubt mirroring his own internal struggle. He carried the weight of responsibility for their safety and welfare. But he was equally certain that delivering Cassidy to Barlow would be akin to signing her death warrant. He glanced at Cassidy, standing tall on the porch of the sheriff's office, her face pale yet resolute. He perceived the fear lurking in her eyes, yet also a stubborn spark, a refusal to surrender. At that moment, his course became clear. "We're going to shield her," Noah announced, his voice resonating with newfound resolve. "We'll stand together, united, and demonstrate to Barlow that he can't simply bully us. This is our town, and we won't permit him to seize it." A cheer erupted from the crowd, their fear momentarily replaced by a surge of solidarity. They were a community of modest size, yet fiercely loyal to one another, and they were prepared to defend what was right. Noah turned to Cassidy, and for the first time since her arrival in Silver Creek, he discerned a glimmer of hope flickering in her eyes. He remained uncertain about the future, but he knew they would face the challenges ahead together, as one. A past unveiled the stillness inside the sheriff's office felt weighty, a thick blanket more substantial than the sunlit dust dancing in the air. Behind his scarred desk, its surface polished by countless worried hands, Noah sat. He gestured for Cassidy to take a seat, but she remained upright, a figure sculpted from equal parts fear and grit. What words would unlock her story? He sought a way to inquire without dismantling the precarious tranquility that followed the morning's clash. He broke the silence, his voice gravelly. "Tell me about Barlow." A flinch, minute yet revealing, betrayed the steel in her gaze. Turning her back to him, she went to the window, her gaze fixed on Silver Creek, the community he was sworn to safeguard. "There isn't much to say. He's a man used to getting his way. And he wanted you." Not a question, merely a statement of fact. She pivoted, their eyes locked, and a vulnerability emerged, deeper than mere fright. A profound sorrow lived in the creases framing her lips, the darkness that pooled beneath her eyes. "He coveted my land. My father was deeply indebted to Barlow, beyond his means." Her voice caught, a fragile thread. "Beyond ours." Noah leaned forward, forearms resting on the desk. "So, Barlow proposed settling the account through marriage." The phrase left a bitter residue. He knew the murky deals men brokered. Cassidy gave a short nod, her posture erect. It was an arrangement. A transaction masquerading as security, the promise of ease. "Father thought he was protecting me." A mirthless sound escaped her. "He thought he was saving me." Did you have feelings for him? The question hung suspended. Her gaze drifted outward, beyond the glass. Affection wasn't part of it. It was about survival, securing our family's dwindling future after the war. Noah observed her, a dormant ache resurfacing in his chest. He knew the burden of responsibility, the sacrifices exacted by family. He'd borne that weight himself, once, and you couldn't proceed. I wouldn't. Now, her voice held a quiet power, an unyielding spirit. I refuse to be owned, to be bartered. I'm not chattel. Rising, he circled the desk, stopping a few feet away. He yearned to offer solace but hesitated, uncertain of her reaction. You fled. Escaped, she corrected. A spark in her eyes. There's a distinction. I wasn't just running from Barlow. I was running toward something. Toward autonomy. And you sought refuge here. I had nowhere else. The defiance ebbed, supplanted by a stark honesty that took him off guard. I'd heard whispers about Silver Creek, a place for fresh starts. Where a woman wasn't just a reflection of her husband or father. It's just a town, Cassidy, he said softly. A small town, struggling to stay afloat. It's more than that, she countered, her eyes holding his. It's a chance to simply be May, not defined by anyone else, but simply me. He saw the longing, the fervent hope for self-determination. He also witnessed the fortitude, the unwavering spirit that propelled her flight, risking everything for freedom. A spirit he both respected and recognized within himself. Barlow won't let this rest, he observed, stating the obvious. He'll pursue you. I know, no hesitation. But I won't run any longer. I'm weary of it. Then you'll stand your ground. If I must. He scrutinized her face, searching for weakness, finding only a fierce resolve that eclipsed any fear. He knew he couldn't permit her to face Barlow alone. He wouldn't. Then you won't be alone in this. Surprise flickered across her features. You'd jeopardize your town for me? I swore an oath to safeguard this town and everyone within its boundaries, he declared, his voice unwavering. That includes you. A half-truth, perhaps. He was protecting the town, yes. But he was also protecting her. He knew, with a certainty that both excited and unsettled him, that he would do anything to ensure her safety, even confront Barlow himself. She advanced, her gaze probing, searching for hidden motives. Why? She breathed. He paused, searching for the right words. He could cite duty, his role as sheriff, but that would be a fabrication. He truly didn't know. Something had shifted the instant he saw her in the street, resolute in her tattered wedding gown. Something dormant had stirred, a part of him he believed long buried. I don't know, he admitted, his voice tinged with emotion. Perhaps I see something in you, something worth defending. She reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and touched his arm, her fingers barely grazing his skin. A jolt, an electric awareness surged through him, leaving him momentarily breathless. Thank you, she whispered, her eyes glistening. Thank you, Noah. He covered her hand with his thumb tracing patterns on her skin. You don't owe me thanks, just trust me. She nodded, her gaze unwavering. I do. In that instant, within the hushed office, amidst dust and shadow, they forged a connection. A tentative alliance born of desperation and hope. A bond that would face its ultimate test as Barlow's shadow descended upon Silver Creek, threatening to consume everything they cherished. Line in the sand, the fierce sun hammered Silver Creek, turning its main street into a crucible of dust. Sheriff Noah Creed stood unyielding, legs braced, his badge a dull glint against the harsh light. He'd been anticipating Barlow's arrival, a smudge on the horizon growing steadily larger for the better part of an hour. At last, the wagon, escorted by a pair of bruisers who looked capable of spitting nails, creaked to a halt. Barlow, a man whose tailored suit screamed of misplaced opulence in the rough-hewn landscape, descended with a huff. His gaze, sharp and beady, locked onto Noah. "Sheriff?" he drawled, the title laced with contempt. "Barlow," Noah responded, his tone even. "The road ends here." A dry chuckle escaped Barlow, a sound that scraped at Noah's patience. "Come now, Sheriff, I'm simply here on business. Seems a certain young lady is beholden to me." He waved a pudgy hand in the general direction of the town. "And I'm here to collect what's owed." Noah straightened, his gaze never wavering from Barlow. The air thrummed with unspoken conflict. "Cassidy Holt is under my protection. Silver Creek isn't a place where you can just stroll in and seize what you fancy." The smile evaporated from Barlow's face. A pulse hammered at his temple. "Protection? You misunderstand. It's not a rescue operation, Sheriff. This is about property, real estate, and Cassidy Holt possesses the key to what is rightfully mine." A chill snaked through Noah's core. He'd suspected as much, but the confirmation landed like a body blow. Her father's debts, then? "Precisely," Barlow purred, his voice a silken menace. "And a legally binding agreement, perfectly above board. I'm entitled to that land, and I fully intend to claim it, with or without the bride's enthusiasm." Noah's jaw hardened. He pictured Cassidy, her resilience shining despite her hardships. The thought of her, trapped in this predicament, stoked a slow-burning fury. That land is her livelihood, her future existence. Her future was mortgaged the moment her father signed his name. Barlow retorted, his eyes gleaming. "Now, will you step aside, Sheriff, or will you obstruct justice?" "Justice?" Noah spat the word. "There's no justice in forcing a woman into a loveless marriage to settle a debt she didn't create. Sentimentality is irrelevant, Sheriff. The law is the law." Barlow's gaze darted toward the saloon, then snapped back to Ball. "Noah, unless, of course, the law in Silver Creek is malleable." Noah understood the implication. He'd heard the whispers, the doubts clinging to his name, the stain of his brother's choices. He'd dedicated years to burying that legacy, proving his integrity. Now, Barlow was flinging it back at him like a gauntlet. "The law in Silver Creek is unwavering," Noah stated, his voice a low growl. "And it applies to everyone, including you. You stir up trouble in my town, Barlow, and you'll answer to me." Barlow's eyes narrowed to slits. "Is that a threat, Sheriff?" "It's a guarantee," Noah returned, his hand drifting closer to his sidearm. He watched Barlow intently, gauging his response. He knew this wasn't just about dirt and dollars. It was about dominance, about flexing power. And Barlow wasn't accustomed to opposition. A palpable tension filled the air, broken only by the groan of the wagon wheels and the lonely cry of a distant crow. The relentless sun intensified the oppressive heat, the simmering antagonism. Finally, Barlow emitted a curt, mirthless laugh. "Very well, Sheriff. I comprehend your position. But don't imagine for a second that this concludes here. I possess patience and resources. Cassidy Holt will be mine, one way or another. He spat on the parched ground, a gesture of pure scorn. "Savor your fleeting triumph, Sheriff. It won't endure." He pivoted and clambered back onto the wagon. His silent escorts remained impassive, their eyes like chips of ice. With a sharp snap of the whip, the wagon jolted forward, retracing its path, leaving a swirling vortex of dust. Noah tracked their departure, a weight settling in his chest. He'd bought Cassidy some breathing room, but he knew Barlow wouldn't concede defeat easily. He'd underestimated the strength of Barlow's claim, the legal leverage he wielded. The sheriff felt the press of his office, the oath he'd sworn to uphold. But beneath that, a new unfamiliar emotion stirred a fierce resolve to protect Cassidy, a fierce desire to shelter her from the gathering storm. He turned toward the saloon, his steps measured and deliberate. He needed to speak with Cassidy, to relay Barlow's intentions, and to devise a strategy. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was merely the opening gambit. A line had been etched in the dirt, and he was standing on the wrong side of it. Or, perhaps, he mused, finally, on the right one. Inside the saloon, the atmosphere was heavy with the mingled scents of stale beer and tobacco. Cassidy sat alone at a corner table, a cup of coffee clutched in her hands. Her complexion was ashen, her eyes haunted. She looked up as he approached, a spark of hope flickering in their depths. "He's gone," Noah announced, his voice low. Cassidy nodded, a wave of relief washing over her weary features. "For now," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Noah settled into the chair opposite her, his gaze probing hers. "He claims he has a legal claim to your land." Cassidy's shoulders slumped in defeat. "I know," she sighed, her voice heavy with despair. "My father, he signed an agreement. He believed he could repay the debt. He was mistaken." "What sort of agreement?" Noah inquired gently. "A marriage contract," Cassidy replied, her voice trembling on the edge of tears. "If he failed to settle the debt, I would be forced to marry Barlow, and he would seize the land." A surge of white-hot anger coursed through Noah. "That's barbaric. It's legal," Cassidy said, her voice flat and resigned. "Barlow insured it." Noah reached across the table and enveloped her hand in his touch offering a silent reassurance. "We'll find a way out of this," he vowed, his eyes locking onto hers. "We won't allow him to take your land or coerce you into anything against your will." Cassidy looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of hope and disbelief. "You would do that for me?" "I would," Noah affirmed, his voice resolute. He meant it with every fiber of his being. He didn't know how he was going to do it, but he would unearth a solution to safeguard her. He wouldn't allow Barlow to triumph. He wouldn't allow her spirit to be broken. He squeezed her hand briefly, then released it. "I need to think," he murmured, rising to his feet. "I'll return later." He exited the saloon, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on his shoulders. He headed toward his office, his mind a whirlwind of possibilities and strategies. He needed a plan of action. He needed to discover a means to combat Barlow, to shield Cassidy, to uphold the principles of justice. And he needed to accomplish it all without compromising his own moral compass. The specters of his past threatened to engulf him, but he wouldn't succumb. He would stand firm. He would defend Cassidy. And he would preserve Silver Creek, even if it demanded the ultimate sacrifice. Hidden talents, the mingled scents of proofing dough and spiced cinnamon wafted out as Cassidy, with a tentative breath, crossed the threshold of Martha's bakery. The cozy interior presented a refuge from the hardscrabble world outside. Sunlight spilled through the broad front window, catching the dance of flower motes in the air. Martha, radiating a genuine warmth as potent as the oven's heat, glanced up from her kneading, her face crinkled into a habitual, kind smile. "Cassidy, lamb, get in here. Don't hover like a scared rabbit." Cassidy's gaze swept the room, pausing on the artful display of pies and pastries. It was a universe apart from her former existence of lavish yet cold grandeur. I don't mean to impose, Mrs. Gable," Sheriff Creed thought. "Balderdash, child," Martha cut in, dusting her hands on her ample apron. "Imposition is Barlow thinking he can bully folks under my roof. You're welcome here, always. Noah mentioned you were needing a haven, and I've always got space for a willing spirit. Besides, she added with a sly wink, "another pair of hands never hurts. These old bones creak more each day." A hesitant smile flickered across Cassidy's face, the first genuine glimmer in weeks. I'm not much of a baker, Mrs. Gable." Martha's chuckle was a rich, comforting sound. "Well, we'll remedy that soon enough. But first," she paused, her gaze sharpening as she took Cassidy in. "Noah hinted about your father's enterprises. Something about numbers and books." A shadow fell over Cassidy's expression, extinguishing the faint light. He managed his ranch, Mrs. Gable. Poorly, it seems." The bitterness in her tone was unmistakable. The ranch, her mother's legacy, was now a pawn in Barlow's game. "And you assisted him?" Martha probed gently, curiosity coloring her voice. I kept the ledgers," Cassidy confessed, the words barely audible. It was a skill forged from necessity, a way to feel valuable in a world that often saw her as merely ornamental. "He wasn't gifted with figures." Martha's eyes sparkled. "Numbers, you say? Mercy! That's a rare gift around here. Most folks struggle to count cattle, let alone balance accounts." She gestured towards a precarious stack of papers threatening to topple from a nearby table. "I've been meaning to tackle those invoices for weeks, but the figures blur before my eyes. Perhaps you'd be willing to cast a glance?" Reluctantly, Cassidy approached the chaotic pile. The papers were a jumble of receipts, bills, and hasty notations. It was a far cry from the meticulous order of her father's ledgers, yet the familiar presence of numbers held a strange allure. She lifted the topmost invoice, her brow furrowing in concentration. Within moments, Cassidy was lost in the task, her fingers dancing across the page, adding, subtracting, calculating. A long-dormant sense of purpose stirred within her. It wasn't the life of glamour she'd envisioned, but it was something real. A chance to contribute, to be more than just excess baggage. Martha observed her, a knowing smile gracing her lips. "Well, I'll be jiggered," she murmured. "You're a natural child, a veritable wizard with figures." Cassidy barely registered the comment, her focus entirely consumed by the task. As she worked, she began to uncover discrepancies, subtle errors that could snowball into significant losses. She highlighted them for Martha, who listened with growing astonishment. "Great heavens, child!" Martha exclaimed. "I've been overpaying Johnson's Mercantile for months. How did you ever catch that?" Cassidy shrugged, a flicker of pride coloring her cheeks. I seem to have an aptitude for it." "An aptitude?" Martha chuckled. "That's like calling a wildfire a flicker. You possess a true gift, Cassidy Holt, one you shouldn't bury." For hours Cassidy labored diligently, sorting invoices, reconciling accounts, and bringing order to the muddle. Meanwhile, Martha introduced her to the rhythms of baking, patiently demonstrating the art of kneading dough, shaping pies, and frosting cakes. Cassidy discovered an unexpected solace in the simple, repetitive motions. It was a welcome divergence from the chaos of her life, a way to find grounding in the present. The bakery filled with the inviting fragrance of baking bread. The afternoon sun, slanting through the window, bathed the scene in a honeyed light. Cassidy, her hands dusted with flour, laughed as Martha playfully tapped her nose with a sugary flourish. In that instant, surrounded by the comforting aroma of spice and the warmth of Martha's generosity, Cassidy experienced a spark of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, she could fashion a new life for herself here in Silver Creek. Maybe she could outrun the shadows of her past and build a future imbued with purpose and meaning. As twilight approached, Martha turned to Cassidy, her eyes brimming with genuine fondness. "You know, child," she began, "I could truly use someone like you around here, someone to manage the books and maybe even take an interest in the baking craft. I'm not getting any younger, and it would bring me peace to see someone carry on the bakery's legacy one day." Cassidy stared, speechless. You want me to stay?" "Of course I do," Martha affirmed, her voice resolute. "You're a bright, capable young woman with much to contribute. And besides," she added with a twinkle, "you've got a knack for apple pie." Tears welled in Cassidy's eyes. It was more than just a job offer. It was an offer of acceptance, of belonging, a chance at redemption. I don't know what to say, Mrs. Gable." "Say yes, child," Martha urged gently. "Say yes, and let's get to work. We've got a mountain of baking ahead of us." Cassidy nodded, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll stay." A wave of relief washed over her, followed by a surge of determination. She couldn't predict what awaited her, but she knew she wasn't alone. She had found a haven in Silver Creek, a protector in Sheriff Creed, and a friend in Martha Gable. And with their support, she would face whatever trials lay ahead. She would learn to bake, master the books, and construct a new life for herself, one step at a time. The taste of autonomy was intoxicating. Sparks in the bakery, the mingled scents of baking yeast and caramelized sugar permeated the air, a warm embrace that did little to banish the fine layer of dust perpetually clinging to Silver Creek. Noah leaned in the doorway of Martha's bakery, pretending to scan the main street, yet his gaze kept returning to Cassidy within. She moved with a newfound assurance among the flour-dusted counters, her touch precise and efficient as she handled ingredients, a slight crease forming between her brows in concentration. It was a world away from the haunted fragility he'd witnessed upon her arrival, a hint of wounded spirit tentatively healing. He noticed Martha, her face a testament to years lived and kindness given, share a light-hearted moment with Cassidy. A genuine smile brightened Cassidy's features then, an unexpected burst of sunlight that banished the lingering shadows. It was the first time he'd heard her truly laugh, a melody as surprising and welcome as a desert bloom. A rancher, thick-set and tanned by the elements, entered, his boots echoing on the worn planks. He touched the brim of his hat toward Cassidy, laugh lines deepening around his eyes. "Mornin', Miss Holt. Martha says you've got a head for numbers. Maybe you could cast an eye over my ledger sometime. Seems like those cattle rustlers are bleedin' me dry with their fancy arithmetic." Cassidy's grin widened as she swiped flour dust onto her apron. "I'd be glad to, Mr. Peterson. Whenever you're free." Her voice resonated with a sincere warmth that filled the small space, an authentic connection that took Noah by surprise. He had anticipated a guarded reserve, but she was embracing this new existence with a quiet resolve that both captivated and intrigued him. Straightening, he pushed off the doorframe, the aged wood offering a creak of protest. He needed to maintain boundaries, to focus on his responsibilities. He was the sheriff, her safety was his charge. Any other inclinations were an unwelcome complication he couldn't afford. Yet, stepping inside, the bell above the door heralding his arrival with a cheerful jingle, he couldn't ignore the magnetic pull he felt. It wasn't merely her beauty, though her vibrant red hair and expressive eyes were undeniably captivating. It was something deeper, a resilience that echoed his own battles, a shared understanding of what it meant to fight for a place in the world. "Morning, Martha," he greeted, his voice a shade deeper than intended. "Just checking in on things." Martha's face lit up. Noah. Always a welcome sight. Cassidy was just demonstrating her accounting prowess. She offered a subtle wink, a silent acknowledgement of the circumstances that propelled Cassidy to Silver Creek. A delicate blush dusted Cassidy's cheeks. "Just helping out where I can," she demurred, avoiding his direct gaze. He found himself drawn closer, near enough to catch a whiff of cinnamon mingling with her unique scent, a delicate blend of wildflowers and something more elusive, untamed. "I appreciate you lending Martha a hand," he offered, his voice gentler. "She's the cornerstone of this community." "She's been incredibly kind to me," Cassidy responded, finally meeting his eyes. He perceived gratitude there, but also something else stirring, a hint of curiosity. A spark of could-it-be attraction? Mr. Peterson cleared his throat, shattering the prod. Fragile moment. "Well, I best be getting back. Cows ain't gonna wrangle themselves and fences need mendin'. You two have a good one." With another tip of his hat, he lumbered out, leaving Noah and Cassidy enveloped in an uneasy silence. Martha, ever observant, hurried to the counter. "Noah, how about a slice of apple pie? Fresh from the oven." "Sounds perfect, Martha," he said, grateful for the distraction. He needed something to occupy his hands, to diffuse the charged atmosphere. While Martha cut the pie, he turned back to Cassidy. "Are you settling in okay?" "Yes, thank you," she replied, her voice still a trifle breathless. "Everyone has been so welcoming." "Silver Creek looks after its own," he stated, the words ringing somewhat hollow, insufficient. He longed to express more, to vow to personally safeguard her, to commit to protecting her from Barlow at any cost. But he held back. Not yet. Accepting the slice of pie from Martha, the warm, sweet fragrance enveloped him. He tasted it. The familiar comfort did little to still the inner turmoil. His attraction to Cassidy was undeniable, overwhelming. Yet, he was also the sheriff, bound by oath to uphold the law and shield the town. Could he reconcile his duty with his yearning? Could he protect Cassidy without jeopardizing everything he'd strived for? He regarded her anew, her gaze meeting his across the space. He detected an echo of his own inner conflict, his own deep longing, and at that instant, he understood that his life in Silver Creek was irrevocably changed. The runaway bride had arrived, stirring something within him he'd thought long dormant. A flame had been ignited, one that threatened to consume everything in its wake. Accidents and suspicion the first sign manifested as flames, not a ravenous inferno devouring all in its path, but a precise conflagration that selectively gutted old Silas's barn on the edge of town. Silas, known more for his obstinacy than any enemies he might have accrued. Noah, breathing in the sharp tang of burnt timbers in the pre-dawn air, watched the old man's futile attempts to rescue what he could, hacking coughs punctuating his efforts. Quick action by neighbors had contained the blaze, yet the destruction was considerable. Fodder, implements, and a substantial portion of the structure itself were rendered useless, blackened husks. "Accident, Sheriff," Silas croaked, his face smudged with grime, spontaneous combustion. "Likely. Happens with hay sometimes." But no one noticed the furtive glances cast toward the road leading away from town, the likely route of Barlow's thugs, and the seed of doubt sown in Silas's gaze. Kneeling, Noah examined a fragment of charred wood with a gloved hand. The burn pattern indicated deliberation rather than accident, a clear point of origin suggesting arson. "Perhaps," Noah conceded, his voice a low rumble. Still, a poke around, he discovered nothing definitive. Just tracks fading toward the open range, tracks indistinguishable from any rancher's. Frustration nipped at him. He knew instinctively this wasn't chance. It was a veiled threat, a dark promise. 2 days elapsed before the second blow fell. Caleb, a fledgling rancher striving to make his mark, discovered 6 of his prized heifers dead in the pasture, saliva bubbling from their mouths. Doc Fuller's examination yielded a grim verdict. "Poisoned," he pronounced, his face etched with concern. "A fast-acting toxin, likely introduced into their feed." Caleb, stricken with disbelief and sorrow, turned pleading eyes toward Noah. "Sheriff, what is happening? This can't be mere misfortune." The weight of his office settled heavily on Noah's shoulders. 2 acts of malice in as many days, both directed at individuals who had openly supported Cassidy and offered her a sanctuary within their community. The message hardened into clarity. Assisting Cassidy carried a steep price. Surveying the scene, the stark contrast of the lifeless bodies against the vibrant green, a wave of cold fury surged through him. Barlow was escalating, testing the limits of what he could perpetrate with impunity. Noah resolved to put an immediate stop to the escalation before true tragedy struck. "I'll unearth the perpetrator." "Caleb," Noah pledged, his voice firm and calm, devoid of warmth. "I give you my word." He dedicated the subsequent days patrolling the range, interviewing ranchers, pressing anyone who might have observed unusual activity. His efforts yielded nothing, save a spreading disquiet that permeated the town. Neighbors regarded each other with suspicion, the once solid camaraderie of Silver Creek fracturing under the strain. Fear, a potent weapon in Barlow's arsenal, was being deployed effectively. One evening, an unseen force drew Noah to the bakery. Through the window he observed Cassidy, her face radiant in the golden light of the oven, sharing a moment of laughter with Martha, who had a comforting arm around her shoulders. The sight offered a fleeting warmth, a flicker of hope amidst the encroaching darkness, yet it also ignited a fierce determination to protect them. He would not permit Barlow to rob them of their joy, or the town of its spirit. Pushing open the door, the welcoming fragrance of baking bread washed over him. Cassidy turned, her smile momentarily faltering as her gaze met his. He knew she was cognizant of the growing anxiety gripping the town, the subtle undercurrents of trepidation spreading like creeping vines. "Sheriff," she greeted cautiously. "Is something amiss?" Noah summoned a reassuring smile. "Just checking in, ensuring your safety." "I'm fine," she replied, but the worry lines around her eyes betrayed her concern. "But the barn, Caleb's livestock, everyone is talking." "I know," Noah acknowledged, his gaze unwavering. "And I am committed to uncovering the individuals responsible." Martha, her features etched with worry, placed a freshly baked loaf on the counter. "It's Barlow, isn't it? He's trying to terrorize us." Noah offered no verbal confirmation, yet his silence spoke volumes. He turned his attention back to Cassidy, her face pale and drawn. He longed to reassure her that everything would resolve itself, a promise he could not honestly make. "Cassidy," he began, his voice low and earnest, "I need you to exercise caution. Avoid venturing out alone, and if you witness anything, however insignificant, you must inform me immediately." She nodded, her eyes reflecting a blend of fear and resolve. "I will," she asserted. "I won't let him triumph." He lingered, conversing with Martha, absorbing their apprehensions, attempting to reassure them that he maintained control of the situation. However, as he walked back toward his office, the burden of his responsibilities felt heavier than ever. He was caught in a conflict between his oath to the law and his burgeoning affection for Cassidy, a collision he sensed was rapidly approaching. Later that night, ensconced in his office, the silence punctuated only by the clock's steady ticking, Noah studied the map of Silver Creek spread upon his desk. He meticulously traced the routes in and out of town, pinpointed the locations of the recent attacks, seeking a connection, a detail that had eluded him. His intense focus on safeguarding Cassidy had blinded him to the broader strategy. Barlow's target extended beyond Cassidy. He was actively dismantling the town itself, crushing its spirit, coercing it into submission. Fatigue gnawed at him as he closed his eyes. He needed to devise a means to neutralize Barlow, to protect Cassidy and the town, without resorting to the same underhanded methods as his adversary. But how? How could he uphold justice while confronting an individual who operated solely outside its bounds? The solution, he reasoned, resided within the town itself, in the collective strength and endurance of its inhabitants. He couldn't succeed alone. He needed to galvanize the community, to demonstrate to Barlow that Silver Creek would not yield to intimidation. Rising to his feet, determination etched on his face, he understood his course of action. He had to place his faith in the people of Silver Creek to reignite their hope and offer them a reason to unite, and he had to be prepared to risk everything, even his life, to ensure their safety. He approached the window, gazing out at the darkened streets. The conflict was merely commencing. The following morning, Noah convened a town meeting. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the air heavy with apprehension and uncertainty. He stood on the makeshift stage before the general store, his gaze encompassing the assembled townsfolk. He saw the fear reflected in their eyes, yet he also observed something else. A glimmer of defiance, a stubborn refusal to surrender. "I am aware of your fear," he stated, his voice resonating with authority. "I know of the events that have unfolded, the fire, the poisoned livestock, all designed to frighten us, to sow discord among us." He paused to allow his words to take root. "But we cannot allow that to happen. We cannot let Barlow achieve victory." He shared the details of his investigation, the scarcity of solid evidence, his firm belief in Barlow's culpability. He emphasized his dependence on their assistance, their vigilance, their willingness to speak out in the face of wrongdoing. "This is no longer simply about Cassidy," he declared. "This concerns our town, our way of life. If we permit Barlow to escape accountability, he will continue to press his advantage, to take and take until nothing remains." He witnessed a shift in the crowd's demeanor, the fear gradually replaced by simmering anger, by unyielding resolution. He saw Silas and Caleb, standing shoulder to shoulder, their faces hard yet resolute. He saw Martha, her eyes ablaze with unwavering defiance. "What is it you ask us to do, Sheriff?" Silas asked, his voice raspy yet strong. Noah inhaled deeply, his heart pounding. He was asking them to risk everything, yet he knew it was the only path forward. "I ask that you watch over one another," he instructed. "Report any suspicious activity. Do not hesitate to speak out. And above all else, do not relinquish hope. Together we can weather this storm." A murmur rippled through the crowd, a wave of assent. He witnessed a renewed strength in their faces, a sense of unity that had been absent for days. He had given them a reason to rally together, a cause to defend. And as he surveyed the faces of the people of Silver Creek, he realized that Barlow had gravely miscalculated. He had underestimated their resilience, their loyalty, their unwavering commitment to protect their home. And that, Noah knew, was a mistake he would soon deeply regret. Torn between world sunbeams, thick with swirling dust, knifed through the gloom of Noah's office. He sorted the scant clues, the acrid remnants of Silas's barn fire. A file bearing traces of poison lifted from Caleb's well. Nothing solid, no tether directly to Barlow. Disappointment coiled in his stomach, a sourness that lingered on his tongue. Sheriff, sworn protector, he felt the law buckle under Barlow's creeping influence. He was chasing smoke, watching shadows lengthen across Silver Creek. Each incident felt surgical, intended to fray the community's bonds, thread by thread. Gut screamed Barlow, but intuition held no weight in court, assuming Barlow allowed a trial at all. He pinched the bridge of his nose, the town's safety a crushing weight. He was divided, torn between his oath and the burgeoning something for Cassidy. Denial was futile. The quiet fortitude in her gaze, the carefully masked fragility they chipped away at his hardened shell. That vulnerability felt like a chink in his armor, a point Barlow could exploit. He rose, crossed to the window, surveying the familiar street. The vibrant pulse of daily life seemed muted, replaced by an ominous stillness. Faces were tight, conversations hushed. Barlow's darkness had spread like ink on parchment across Silver Creek. He had to act, and swiftly. But how? He walked a high wire, balancing justice and conscience, duty and desire. And the winds were shifting. Cassidy lingered at the window of her cramped room at the boarding house, parting the threadbare curtains. Main Street felt distant, though mere yards away. She watched Mrs. Henderson sweep the general store's porch, each movement measured and slow, her face a canvas of anxieties. She noticed Jedediah, the blacksmith, hammering iron, his usual jovial tune absent. A wave of remorse crashed over her, icy and heavy. This was her doing, all of it. Before her arrival, Silver Creek had been a peaceful, if unremarkable, haven. Now, it was besieged, gripped by fear. Barlow was here because of her. His malice, his brutality, had been unleashed on these decent folk because she had sought sanctuary among them. She was the harbinger of this storm. She balled her hands into fists, nails biting into her skin. She couldn't remain. She wouldn't allow Barlow to consume Silver Creek. The thought of fleeing, of abandoning the sole place she had known peace, the only people to offer kindness, was a wrenching pain. But she was left with no choice. She had to shield them, even at the cost of her own happiness. She rifled through her meager possessions, retrieving the small hoard of coins she had salvaged during her flight. Enough for a stage fare, perhaps sufficient to carry her beyond Barlow's reach. Far from Silver Creek, she could vanish, reinvent herself in some distant place. Not a life, not truly, but one free from the ever-present dread, unburdened by the knowledge that she endangered everyone around her. But where to go? What to become? A runaway bride, armed with nothing but a soiled gown and a shattered heart. The vast expanse of the country yawned before her, an unforgiving panorama. Still, it was preferable to staying, to watching Silver Creek wither beneath Barlow's power. She sank onto the edge of the bed, the pouch feeling like a stone weight in her hand. Her course was set. She would depart in the morning, before Barlow could further tighten his hold on the town. She would leave, praying her absence would suffice to save them all. That evening, Noah discovered Cassidy on the boarding house porch, staring into the deepening twilight. A solitary cricket rasped in the silence, its song a mournful counterpoint to the palpable tension. He paused, hesitant. Her struggle was evident etched into her features, evident in her braced posture. "Evening, Cassidy," he murmured, his voice gentle. She startled, looking up. "Noah, I didn't hear you." He settled beside her on the porch swing, the wood groaning softly beneath his weight. The silence thickened between them, laden with unspoken sentiments. He yearned to reach for her hand, to offer solace, but restrained himself. He was the sheriff, he reminded himself. Objectivity demanded distance. "I know things are tough right now," he offered, finally breaking the quiet. She exhaled, a long, weary sound. "Tough? That's putting it mildly. I'm doing everything I can to find out who's behind what happened to Silas and Caleb," he pressed on, his tone resolute. "I won't let Barlow terrorize this town." "It's not about the town, Noah," she said, her voice barely audible. "It's about me. He's doing this because of me." "He's doing this because he's a tyrant, Cassidy," Noah countered, his voice sharpening. "He wants control. You're just a pretext." She shook her head. "No, he wants me. And he'll crush anyone in his path to get me. I can't let him hurt these people. They've shown me nothing but kindness." Noah's jaw clenched. "What are you saying?" She averted her gaze, focusing on the darkening horizon. "I'm saying that I'm leaving." The words struck him like a blow to the gut. An unexpected spike of pain shot through his chest. "Leaving? Where will you go?" "It doesn't matter," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Somewhere he won't find me. Somewhere he can't hurt anyone else." "You can't run, Cassidy," Noah pleaded. "This is your home now. These people care about you." He trailed off, unable to voice the full extent of his feelings, not amid such peril and uncertainty. "This isn't my home, Noah," she replied, her voice laced with deep sorrow. "It can't be. Not while he's still out there." He reached for her hand, his fingers enveloping hers. It was icy, trembling. "Don't go," he urged, his voice low with desperation. "Please. Let me protect you. Let me protect them." Her eyes, glistening with unshed tears, met his. "Can you, Noah? Can you truly protect us all?" He offered no reply. He couldn't. Uncertainty gnawed at him. He was caught between allegiances, between his duty and his desire, between the dictates of the law and the yearnings of his heart, and time was slipping away. Night deepened around them, the cricket's serenade melting into the gathering shadows. The destiny of Silver Creek and the fate of Cassidy Holt hung precariously in the balance. A sheriff's confession, the stillness in Noah's office pressed down, a tangible weight surpassing even Silver Creek's usual muggy air. Cassidy remained a statue at the window, back turned, surveying the hushed street. Dusk bled across the landscape, painting the clapboard storefronts in shades of rust and umber, mirroring the storm gathering inside him. He watched her, a constricting band around his chest, the crucial words jammed in his throat. His life had been a testament to order, a stark dichotomy of right and wrong, an inflexible doctrine. But Cassidy, a whirlwind of defiance and shadowed eyes, had blurred those distinctions, muddied the pristine clarity of his world. "Cassidy," he rasped, his voice raw from disuse, unaccustomed to voicing such intimacy. She didn't respond, her silhouette a delicate etching against the failing light. "Stay, please." She finally pivoted, her face an enigma in the gloom. "I warned you, Noah. I'm nothing but trouble. Barlow's relentless. He won't quit until he gets what he wants. And that is what, exactly? You or the land itself?" A flicker of hesitation crossed her face. "Likely both. He sees me as a possession, something to control." The thought of Barlow's covetous gaze on her ignited a possessive fury within Noah, a blaze of protectiveness he hadn't known he possessed. "He won't lay a hand on you, Cassidy, not while I'm around." A mirthless laugh escaped her. "You can't shield me forever, Noah. He has influence, reach. This town is too small to offer real sanctuary." He closed the gap between them. "Then we'll make it bigger. We'll stand against him, Cassidy, together." Her eyes, wide pools of ingrained fear, searched his. "Why? Why are you doing this? You barely know me." He paused, hand hovering, unsure if he dared touch her. He had to make her understand. "Because I admire your resilience, Cassidy, your grit. You've endured so much, yet you haven't buckled. You haven't let him crush you." A single tear escaped, tracing a glistening path down her cheek. "I'm terrified, Noah." He reached out then, his fingertips feathering across her cheek, gently erasing the tear. The simple gesture sent a current through him, a visceral, undeniable connection. "I know, but you don't need to be. Not anymore." He framed her face, his thumbs gently caressing her skin. "I can't promise you an easy path, Cassidy, but I promise you this: I will safeguard you. With everything I possess, even if it demands that I betray every principle I hold dear." He saw a flicker of hope ignite in her gaze, a nascent spark in the darkness. He had to nurture that ember. I don't know what to say." She breathed, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "You don't have to say anything," he countered, his gaze locked on hers. "Just trust me." He recognized he was transgressing boundaries, stepping over lines he had meticulously maintained. He was sworn to impartiality, the sheriff, the keeper of order. But in that instant, gazing into Cassidy's eyes, he understood he couldn't stand idly by and watch her flee, witness her succumb to Barlow's dominance. He lowered his head, his brow resting against hers. I care about you, Cassidy. Far more than I should, more than I ever believed possible." The declaration felt like a dam breaking, a burden he had carried for what felt like an eternity. Her breath hitched. "Noah." He drew back slightly, scrutinizing her face for any sign of rejection. He was prepared, steeled for the sting of unreciprocated emotion. But the emotion he witnessed was something different, a mirroring of his own vulnerability, his own deep-seated longing. "I know this is complicated," he pressed on, his voice a mere breath. "I know I'm likely a fool, but I had to tell you. I needed you to know how I felt." He waited, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs, the silence stretching, thin and brittle. He had bared his soul, laid bare his most intimate feelings. The risk was staggering, but the alternative seeing her vanish was intolerable. At long last her eyes fluttered open, filled with a blend of apprehension and something bordering on affection. "Noah," she said softly, her hand rising to meet his cheek. I care about you too." The words resonated like a balm, a soothing caress to his raw soul. He knew this was only the genesis, that the road ahead would be treacherous and uncertain. But in that moment, holding her captive gaze, a swell of hope buoyed him, a conviction that together they could weather any storm. He leaned closer, his lips finding hers in a tentative exploration. But as her lips yielded, granting him entry, the kiss deepened, escalating into a more intense, desperate communion. It was a kiss born of longing, of raw vulnerability, a shared fear laced with unyielding hope. A kiss that forged a bond, a connection destined to be tested and strengthened. He broke away, breathless, his pulse still hammering. "I meant what I said, Cassidy. I will protect you, regardless of the cost." She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I believe you, Noah." He knew then that he had irrevocably made his choice. He had breached his own code. He was no longer solely the sheriff, an enforcer of the law. He was something more, her protector, her ally. Perhaps even something he wasn't prepared to define. But he knew, with unwavering certainty, that he would do anything for her, even if it meant sacrificing everything. Divided loyalties, the Silver Creek Community Hall, typically a haven for boisterous gatherings, pulsed with palpable tension. All eyes fixed on Noah, an unspoken appeal mirroring from each concerned face, their faith resting precariously on his shoulders. He stood on the platform, the familiar boards now seeming treacherous beneath his weight. The air hung heavy with suppressed unease, the homely scent of wood smoke tainted with the sharper tang of apprehension. "Friends," Noah began, a manufactured calm infusing his words. "We're all aware of the situation." He paused, allowing the gravity of his statement to permeate the room. "Miss Holt sought refuge in Silver Creek, and as sheriff, I granted it. Now, Mr. Barlow arrives, claiming ownership." A wave of murmuring swept through the hall, a swell of dissent threatening to capsize his authority. He noticed Martha Elkins, her face creased with worry, clutching her well-worn Bible tighter. Silas, the blacksmith, his usual hearty laughter extinguished, stared downwards, fists clenched tight. "Ownership?" a voice thundered from the rear. It was Jed, a rancher notorious for his obstinacy and hot temper. "She's a human being, not some calf to be branded." Scattered applause briefly lifted the atmosphere before being swiftly suppressed by darting, nervous glances towards the doorway, where two of Barlow's men stood like granite sentinels, their eyes devoid of warmth. Noah raised a hand, silencing the gathering. "Jed speaks the truth," Noah conceded, his gaze encompassing the room. "However, Barlow possesses a marriage contract. Regardless of its legitimacy, it introduces complications." Complications. This time, Sarah Miller, the town's schoolteacher, spoke, her voice trembling yet resolute. "It means that man believes he controls her. Are we simply going to surrender her as if she were an object?" "We must be pragmatic," countered Mr. Abernathy, the general store proprietor, his voice marked by trepidation. "Barlow commands resources, manpower. We cannot afford to antagonize him. It could spell our collective ruin." "Ruin?" Jed scoffed. "What sort of existence is it if we let bullies dictate our lives? What example do we impart to the next generation?" The assembly dissolved into a chaotic chorus of voices, each fueled by individual anxieties and convictions. Accusations rang out, dormant fears surfaced, and Silver Creek's fragile cohesion fractured. Noah watched, a cold pit forming in his stomach, as the town he had pledged to safeguard began to unravel. "Enough!" Noah bellowed, his voice cleaving the noise like a lightning strike. Every gaze snapped back to him, the room falling silent once more. He drew a deep breath, struggling to maintain his composure. "We'll achieve nothing by yelling at each other." He looked at Sarah, her face pale but determined. He saw the trepidation etched in Mr. Abernathy's expression, the smoldering fury in Jed's, the silent entreaty in Martha's. He saw Silver Creek's fate dangling precariously over an abyss. "I understand your anxieties," he said, his voice now gentler, more deliberate. "I know you're afraid, but we cannot let fear dictate our course. We must define the kind of town we aspire to be." He paused, his gaze settling on Cassidy, who stood at the hall's edge, her face a tapestry of quiet desperation. She was the catalyst for this turmoil, the spark that ignited the dry brush of their fears. Yet, he couldn't deny the burgeoning affection he felt, the fierce protectiveness that coursed through him whenever their eyes met. "I swore an oath to uphold the law," Noah continued, the weight of his duty evident in his tone. "But I also swore to safeguard the people of Silver Creek, and that includes Miss Holt." He scanned the faces before him, seeking understanding, support. Instead, he found only doubt, uncertainty, and the burgeoning realization that he stood alone. "I'm not asking you to risk your lives," Noah pleaded, a hint of desperation coloring his voice. "I'm asking you to uphold your principles, to demonstrate to Barlow that Silver Creek resists intimidation, that we prioritize justice and compassion over cowardice." Mr. Abernathy cleared his throat, his gaze flickering nervously towards Barlow's henchman. "Sheriff, with all due respect, principles offer little defense against bullets." "Perhaps not," Noah conceded, "but they prevent the crushing of a man's spirit." He looked at Cassidy once more, her eyes locked on his. He saw a spark of hope flicker within them, a fragile ember in the face of overwhelming darkness. He knew, without a doubt, that he couldn't fail her. He couldn't fail Silver Creek. "I'm going to speak with Barlow," Noah announced, his voice firm and unwavering. "I'm going to attempt to reason with him, to find a peaceful resolution. But I will not surrender Miss Holt. I will not compromise our values." He descended from the platform, his heart weighed down by the knowledge that he trod a perilous path. He could feel the townspeople's eyes boring into his back, some brimming with hope, others with disapproval, and many with raw fear. As he approached the exit, he passed Cassidy. She reached out, her fingers trembling as she touched his arm. "Thank you, Noah," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. He met her gaze, his heart aching at the vulnerability he witnessed in her eyes. "I won't let him take you," he promised, his voice low and fierce. He stepped out of the community hall, the immense weight of his choice pressing down on him. He knew he was walking a precarious line, balancing his legal obligations with his growing feelings for Cassidy and his responsibility to protect Silver Creek. One misstep, and everything could shatter. A bold proposal barefoot on the porch at the Silver Creek Mercantile, Cassidy felt the weathered planks bite into her soles. The air, thick with dry earth and unease, pressed down on her. Sleep had been a stranger, her nights consumed by relentless replays of her confrontation with Barlow, a desperate quest for a solution that spared both her and the town. Now, a strategy, audacious perhaps, had finally taken shape. Noah, positioned at the periphery of the assembled townsfolk, watched her, His concern was a palpable thing, etched into the deep furrows around his eyes. Sleeplessness had claimed him too. She knew his office lamp a silent sentinel until daybreak. He'd offered solace, a pledge of protection that threatened to buckle him under its weight. Drawing in a lungful of air, Cassidy amplified her voice, aiming it across the still street. "People of Silver Creek," she began, her voice betraying only a tremor. "Barlow asserts a claim upon me, says my land is his by right of agreement." The word left a foul taste. "I dispute that claim, but a simple denial lacks the power to deter him. He commands resources, wields influence. We cannot meet him on his terms with firearms and fury." A nervous ripple spread through the crowd. Hemlock Sr. shuffled his weight, eyes fixed on the dust. Martha Peabody worried the fabric of her apron. Fear, oppressive and stifling, filled the air. "Therefore," Cassidy pressed on, voice gaining purchase, "I propose a contest of a different nature. A battle for equity, for what we know is just." She locked eyes with Noah, drawing strength from the unwavering fortitude she found there. "I propose an auction." The word hung suspended, startling and bold. A wave of murmurs, shot through with bewilderment and a fragile hope, arose from the townsfolk. Barlow, previously lounging against the saloon wall, a sneer plastered across his features, straightened abruptly. His gaze, cold as a reptile's, sharpened. Ignoring him, Cassidy focused on the faces before her. "The land will go to the highest bidder. The residents of Silver Creek will decide its fate, fairly and transparently. Should Mr. Barlow believe he is entitled to it, he is welcome to participate. Let him prove his worth not through coercion, but through legitimate competition." She descended from the porch, integrating herself into the throng. "The proceeds of the auction," she declared, "will benefit the town. To erect a school, repair the church, secure a future for our children, a living testament to the spirit and backbone of Silver Creek." Martha Peabody gasped, revelation blooming in her eyes. Hemlock Sr. raised his head, a spark of defiance igniting within. The murmurs intensified into a swelling chorus of hesitant approval. Noah navigated the crowd, stopping directly before Cassidy. "Are you certain about this, Cassidy?" His voice, a low, urgent rumble. "You'd be surrendering everything." "I already have, Noah," she responded, voice soft yet resolute. "Everything but my autonomy. And this is how I reclaim it." She pivoted to readdress the assembled townsfolk. "This carries risk, I know. Barlow possesses the capacity to outbid us all. But I harbor a deep belief in Silver Creek. I trust the heart of this town, and together we can demonstrate that some inheritances are not for sale." A swell of emotion washed through the crowd. Fear persisted, but now intermingled with resolution. A small community stared down a powerful foe, yet remained unbroken, unconquered. "Not yet." Barlow forced his way to the front, face twisted into a mask of virulent fury. "You imagine you can thwart me, little sparrow?" he hissed, voice laced with poison. "That this a pathetic display will alter anything." Cassidy stood firm, meeting his venomous gaze. "This isn't a display, Mr. Barlow. It's a declaration, a choice for Silver Creek, a choice for myself." "You will rue this decision," he seethed, his eyes boring into her soul. "You will all rue this." He pivoted sharply, disappearing into the dim recesses of the saloon. The ensuing silence, thick with tension, was broken only by the nervous cough of a bystander. Noah moved to Cassidy's side, placing a comforting hand on her arm. "Organization will be key," he offered, his voice a steady anchor. "A formal auction, proper rules, impartial witnesses. We must ensure scrupulous fairness." "My trust is in you, Noah," Cassidy replied, her voice barely audible. He squeezed her arm gently. "I won't fail you." The ensuing days became a feverish whirlwind. Noah, in collaboration with the town council, spearheaded the auction's arrangement, setting a date, distributing notices, and enlisting a reputable auctioneer from a neighboring county. Cassidy spent her days in conversation with the townspeople, elucidating her proposal, allaying their anxieties, sharing her fears, her aspirations, her unwavering confidence in Silver Creek. The residents, galvanized, coalesced around her. They tidied the town square, constructed a makeshift platform, and collected donations towards a town coffer intended to bolster bidding power. Even the previously dubious, swayed by Barlow's intimidation tactics, began to entertain the possibility of victory. The atmosphere in Silver Creek crackled with raw energy. Apprehension lingered, but was eclipsed by a sense of shared purpose, a feeling of collective identity previously unknown. They were fighting for their community, for their future, and for the courageous woman who had dared challenge the indomitable Mr. Barlow. The morning of the auction saw the town square overflowing. People had journeyed from afar, drawn by the tales of the defiant runaway bride and the looming clash with the ruthless cattle baron. Anticipation hung heavy in the air, the quiet punctuated only by the occasional rustle of clothing and the nervous cough of an onlooker. Cassidy, hard pounding, stood on the stage. Donning a plain dress, borrowed from Martha Peabody, she felt an unprecedented surge of strength. She scanned the faces in the crowd, finding not fear, but burning hope. Noah stood beside her, his presence a bulwark of support. His sheriff's uniform, badge gleaming under the sun, symbolized law and order in a community verging on anarchy. The auctioneer, a gangly figure with a resonant voice, stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "welcome to the Silver Creek land auction. Let the bidding commence." The initial bid came from a local rancher, a lifelong resident of Silver Creek. A modest opening, but a beginning. Further bids followed, gradually but steadily escalating the land's value. Barlow observed from the rear of the crowd, arms crossed, his expression a chilling mask of indifference. He remained silent, a predatory presence, ready to shatter their hopes with his superior wealth. As the bids rose, Cassidy felt a surge of pride. The people of Silver Creek were fighting for her, for their town. They were risking all they possessed, defying Barlow's threats, refusing to yield. Finally, the auctioneer called for a final offer. The price had reached a stunning height, surpassing all expectations. The crowd fell silent, awaiting Barlow's response. He stepped forward, eyes locked on Cassidy. $100,000, he announced, his voice a thunderclap. A collective gasp swept through the assembled townsfolk. An astronomical sum, beyond their means. Hope dwindled in Cassidy's heart. She had wished, against all reason, that they might triumph. But Barlow's wealth appeared insurmountable. The auctioneer turned to Cassidy, his expression conveying sympathy. "Are there any further bids?" he asked, his voice faint. Silence prevailed. Cassidy closed her eyes, fighting to suppress tears. She had failed them. She had placed the town in jeopardy, and now they stood to lose everything. But then a voice cut through the silence. A familiar voice. $100,001. It was Noah. Sabotage and confrontation, the gavel hovered, a poised threat above Judge Mallory. Silver Creek gasped for air, the atmosphere thick with grime, apprehension, and the tang of exertion. Noah observed Barlow, his stance tight, a predator measuring its prey. He understood this auction was merely the prelude. "Any further offers?" Mallory's voice, frayed at the edges, broke the quiet. Every gaze drilled into Noah, the unspoken inquiry pressing down. Could he truly afford this? Had he gambled away his town's destiny for one woman? His eyes sought Cassidy's. Her pallor was stark, her expression a blend of thankfulness and profound fear. The cost of his wager was etched around her lips. A near imperceptible nod was all he could offer. Then, a voice sliced through the tension, as cutting as an Arctic gust. "This is sheer folly." Barlow's contempt dripped like venom. He unfolded himself from the crowd, his shadow engulfing those nearby. "Do you think your meager purses can compete with me? That you can wrest from me what is rightfully mine?" A gob of spittle landed on the dusty ground, a calculated insult. Unease rippled through the townsfolk. Fear, an unwelcome constant in Silver Creek, began to stir in their bellies. Barlow's men, previously dispersed, coalesced, their hands straying toward their sidearms. Judge Mallory cleared his throat, a nervous tremor in his tone. "Mr. Barlow, I must implore you to maintain decorum." Ignoring the judge, Barlow's gaze, hard as onyx, locked onto Cassidy. "This performance changes nothing, Cassidy. You are mine. The land is mine, and I invariably claim what I desire." Cassidy, though visibly shaken by a tremor he could detect, stood firm. "This is not yours, Barlow. It belongs to Silver Creek now." A harsh, grating laugh was Barlow's reply. "We shall see." With a snap of his fingers, two henchmen shouldered through the throng, rifles clutched in their hands, held low, yet menacing. "What is the meaning of this?" Noah's voice rose, his hand instinctively nearing his own weapon. "Meaning?" Barlow's lips curled. "Meaning, this charade concludes. I am reclaiming what belongs to me." He gestured towards his men. "Seize her." The two men moved on Cassidy. A collective intake of breath swept through the crowd. Noah drew his pistol. "Halt right there, Barlow." Barlow's eyes narrowed to slits. "You wouldn't shoot me, Sheriff. Not before all these upright citizens." "Don't push me, Barlow." Noah's tone was a low growl. A chilling smile etched itself onto Barlow's face. "Very well, Sheriff. Let us merely say, I am withdrawing my bid." He nodded to his men. "Nonetheless, I still claim what is mine." His men surged toward Cassidy. A gunshot ripped through the tense air, the echo momentarily paralyzing the crowd. "I said, halt!" The hired guns paused, but only briefly, their loyalty absolute. They reached for Cassidy, their grip bruising and insistent. Without hesitation, Noah fired again, this time targeting the legs of the closest assailant. With a strangled cry, the man crumpled, clutching his wounded thigh. The other, momentarily stunned, released Cassidy, scrambling for his own firearm. Pandemonium erupted. Barlow's thugs unleashed a volley of gunfire, transforming the square into a chaotic theater of war. Shrieks pierced the air as people dove for cover behind wagons and buildings. Noah shoved Cassidy behind him, shielding her with his own body. "Get down," he roared, returning fire. Deputy Clem, alongside several hastily deputized townsfolk, answered the barrage. The air grew thick with the pungent reek of cordite and the ear-splitting din of the conflict. It was a glimpse into the inferno. Noah exchanged shots with Barlow's crew, his movements honed and lethal. Seeking refuge behind a water trough, he swiftly reloaded. He noted Clem felling one of the outlaws with a precise shot. But they were outnumbered, outgunned. Barlow remained back, surveying the chaos with a cruel, self-satisfied smirk. "This is your doing, Sheriff," he bellowed over the cacophony. "You brought this upon yourselves." Cassidy clung to Noah, burying her face against his back. "Noah, we have to end this." "I know," he replied, a hard edge to his voice. "Just stay down." He risked a quick assessment of the scene. The townsfolk fought bravely, but they were at a distinct disadvantage. Barlow's crew were seasoned killers, while the majority of Silver Creek's inhabitants had never discharged a firearm in fury. He saw Mrs. Henderson, the town's baker, courageously wielding a shotgun from behind her wagon, her face a mask of gritty determination. He observed young Billy, the stable hand, darting amongst the bullets as he attempted to lead the horses to safety. He saw the palpable fear, but also the inspiring resilience. He couldn't allow this to continue. He had to conclude this nightmare, whatever the cost. He glanced at Cassidy, her eyes wide with terror. He made his choice. "Stay here," he commanded, urging her further behind the trough. "I will put an end to this." "No, Noah, don't." He disregarded her plea. Taking a deep breath, he steeled himself and stepped out into the open. Raising his weapon, he aimed directly at Barlow. "It ends here, Barlow." A chilling, derisive laugh echoed from Barlow. "You believe you can stop me, Sheriff? You are merely one man." "Perhaps," Noah responded, his voice unwavering. "But I am the law in Silver Creek, and I will not permit you to destroy this town." He tightened his finger on the trigger. The bullet zipped past Barlow's ear, close enough for him to wince. Immediately, Barlow's men unleashed their fury upon Noah, but he was already in motion, evading the hail of lead. He had to reach Barlow. He had to halt the bloodshed. He surged forward, firing as he advanced, a whirlwind of deadly purpose. One of Barlow's men intercepted him, raising his gun. Without a moment's hesitation, Noah shot him, the man collapsing in a heap. He was closing the distance. He could see the raw hate in Barlow's gaze, the cold, ruthless calculation that defined him. Barlow raised his own firearm, aiming it at Noah. "You are a dead man, Sheriff." Undeterred, Noah continued his approach, his gaze locked on Barlow's. This was it, the moment of truth. Then, as Barlow was about to fire, a figure moved in front of him. It was Cassidy. "No!" she screamed, a piercing sound. "Don't." Barlow hesitated, surprise momentarily registering on his face. He lowered his gun slightly. "Cassidy, get out of the way," Noah yelled, his voice tight. But Cassidy remained rooted to the spot, her body a shield. "Please, Barlow," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Let it end. Just let it end." Barlow stared at her, his features a battlefield of conflicting emotions. He appeared conflicted, unsure. For a fleeting moment, Noah thought he might actually relent. Then, the moment dissipated. Barlow's features hardened, and a cruel smile spread across his face. "You are a fool, Cassidy," he declared. "You always have been." He raised his weapon once more, this time targeting Cassidy directly. Noah knew he had to intervene with swift brutality. He launched himself forward, tackling Barlow to the ground. The firearm was flung from Barlow's grasp, skittering across the dusty earth. They wrestled amidst the swirling dust, a tangle of flailing limbs and primal rage. Noah landed a solid blow on Barlow's face. Barlow bellowed and retaliated, striking Noah on the jaw. They fought tooth and nail, consumed by raw, animalistic instincts. The townsfolk watched in stunned silence, the gunfight briefly forgotten. Noah knew he had to prevail. He had to safeguard Cassidy. He had to protect Silver Creek. He summoned every fiber of his being, fighting with a ferocity he had never known he possessed. Finally, he gained the advantage. He pinned Barlow, his knee digging into Barlow's chest, stifling him. He raised his fist, prepared to deliver the final, decisive blow. But then he paused. He scrutinized Barlow's face, twisted with hate and unbridled rage. He saw the abyss in his eyes, the absence of compassion. And he knew he couldn't commit the act. He couldn't become a murderer. He wouldn't allow Barlow to transform him into the monster he loathed. He lowered his fist. "It's over, Barlow," he rasped, his voice ragged. "It's over." The echo of gunfire still rang in Cassidy's ears as she shoved a fallen table against the overturned wagon, creating a makeshift barricade. Her hands, roughened by years of work but unaccustomed to holding a rifle, trembled slightly. She wasn't the docile woman Barlow believed her to be. Years of quiet observation had taught her more than he ever suspected. She'd seen the simmering resentment in the townspeople's eyes, the quiet defiance in their actions. Now, that defiance had erupted. "Get behind cover!" she yelled, her voice hoarse but firm, surprising even herself. She spotted Martha Henderson, the baker, clutching a rolling pin like a weapon, and young Billy, the stable boy, bravely loading rocks into a sling. A surge of protectiveness, sharp and unfamiliar, coursed through her. This town, these people, they weren't just a refuge. They were something more. Noah, his face grim, moved with a practiced efficiency, directing the townspeople, his presence a calming force amidst the chaos. He caught her eye, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze, before turning back to the immediate threat. The remaining of Barlow's men, stunned by the initial resistance, were regrouping, their faces contorted with rage. The fighting was brutal, close quarters. The air was thick with dust and the acrid smell of gunpowder. Cassidy found a strange clarity in the midst of it all. Fear was still present, but it was overshadowed by a fierce determination. She wouldn't let Barlow take this from them, from her. As the last of Barlow's men were subdued, some wounded, others fleeing a tense silence fell over Silver Creek. The aftermath was stark: broken windows, overturned carts, and the lingering scent of violence. But there was also something else, a palpable sense of unity, of shared defiance. Noah moved through the crowd, checking on the injured, his gaze lingering on Cassidy. "You all right?" he asked, his voice low, almost hesitant. She nodded, a shaky smile playing on her lips. "Never better," she lied, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. The quiet was broken by a cry from young Billy. "Sheriff? Miss Cassidy, look what I found." He held up a battered wooden box, its hinges rusted, its surface covered in dust. It was hidden under the floorboards of the wagon. Cassidy frowned, stepping forward. She didn't recognize the box. Had it belonged to her father? She knelt, carefully brushing away the dirt. The lock was broken. Inside, nestled amongst yellowed fabric, was a rolled-up piece of parchment. With trembling hands, she unfurled it. It was a map, intricately drawn, depicting the surrounding area. But there was something else, a series of symbols and annotations that were unfamiliar. Noah leaned closer, his brow furrowed. "What is it?" Cassidy shook her head, confused. "I don't know. My father never mentioned anything like this." An old-timer, Silas, who had been quietly observing, shuffled forward, his eyes gleaming with sudden recognition. That ain't just any map, Sheriff. That's a surveyor's map. But the markings those are geological. He pointed a gnarled finger at one of the symbols. That symbol, that's an old sign for a specific type of ore. A valuable one. Cassidy's heart leaped. She looked at the map again, her mind racing. Her landa, it wasn't just farmland. It was something more. Something valuable. What kind of ore? Noah asked, his voice tight. Silas's eyes twinkled. Silver, Sheriff. And not just any silver. The kind that made fortunes. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Cassidy felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. This changed everything. The value of her land had just skyrocketed. Barlow's obsession with her wasn't just about control. It was about greed. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She'd been so focused on escaping the marriage, on protecting herself, that she hadn't even considered the true prize he sought. Noah's gaze met hers, his expression unreadable. He knew what this meant. This wasn't just about Cassidy anymore. This was about Silver Creek, about its future. If word got out about the silver, the town would be flooded with prospectors, with opportunists. It could be a boon, or it could be a curse. We need to keep this quiet, Noah said, his voice firm, addressing the crowd. Until we know exactly what we're dealing with, this stays between us. The townspeople nodded in agreement, their faces a mixture of excitement and apprehension. They trusted Noah. They believed in him. And now they had a new secret to protect. Cassidy clutched the map to her chest, her mind reeling. This map, this secret, it was a double-edged sword. It could save Silver Creek, or it could destroy it. And she, the runaway bride, was now at the center of it all. That night, after the wounded had been tended to and the town was settling into an uneasy calm, Noah found Cassidy sitting on the porch of the general store, staring out at the darkened street. The moon cast long shadows, painting the scene in shades of gray. He sat beside her, leaving a comfortable space between them. The silence stretched, filled only with the chirping of crickets and the distant howl of a coyote. "Thank you," Cassidy said softly, breaking the silence. "For what you did today, for protecting me and the town." Noah shrugged, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "It's my job. I'm the sheriff." "It was more than that," she countered, her gaze meeting his. "You didn't have to spare Barlow." He looked away, his jaw tightening. "I did what I thought was right." "But why?" she pressed. "He tried to kill you. He tried to take everything from us." Noah sighed, running a hand through his hair. "He's a broken man, Cassidy, driven by greed and bitterness. Killing him wouldn't have changed anything. It would have just made me another version of him." His words resonated with her. She'd seen that darkness in Barlow's eyes, the emptiness that fueled his cruelty. And she'd seen the flicker of it in herself, the temptation to meet violence with violence. "What about the map?" Noah asked, changing the subject. "What are you going to do?" Cassidy looked down at her hands, her brow furrowed. "I don't know. I need to think. This changes everything." "It does," Noah agreed. "But whatever you decide, you don't have to do it alone." His words were simple, but they carried a weight of unspoken emotion. She looked at him, her heart aching with a mixture of gratitude and longing. He was offering her more than just protection. He was offering her a partnership, a chance to build something together. "Thank you, Noah," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "That means more than you know." He reached out, his hand covering hers. His touch was warm, reassuring. "We'll figure it out, Cassidy. Together." In that moment, under the watchful gaze of the moon, they were no longer just sheriff and runaway bride. They were two people, bound together by circumstance, by shared danger, and by a growing, undeniable connection. The hidden map had revealed more than just a valuable resource. It had revealed the potential for a future they never thought possible. But that future was still uncertain, threatened by the shadows of the past and the looming dangers that lay ahead. "Captured the sun," a molten hammer pounded Cassidy's spine as she guided her horse toward the north ridge. The map's details burned into her memory. This solitary scouting mission was a reckless gamble, fueled by a desperate need to prove her worth, to offer Silver Creek a tangible path forward. The potential silver lode, salvation or damnation, she wasn't sure. A crackle in the undergrowth spurred her hand to her rifle, but reaction lagged. A loop of rope, quick as a striking serpent, cinched around her torso, dragging her from the saddle with jarring force. Wind rushed from her as she slammed into the hard-packed earth, rifle lost in the scrub. Brutal hands hold her upright. Barlow, his gaze, glacial and predatory, raked over her with cruel satisfaction. "Cassidy, the little explorer. How enterprising." His voice, a low rasp that scraped along her nerves, underscored his power, his lust for control. Two of his goons materialized from the trees, their expressions grim, devoid of compassion. "Release me, Barlow," Cassidy demanded, her voice betraying her fear despite her best efforts. A searing ache flared in her side from the fall. A dry, humorless chuckle was his reply. "Release you? You wound me. After all the inconvenience you've caused?" He nodded to his men. "Bind her, securely." Hemp ropes constricted her wrists, lashing her hands behind her. Her struggles were fruitless against their combined might. Panic constricted her throat, stealing her breath. This was it. The end of her brief taste of freedom. The dreaded return to the life she'd fought to escape. Noah's image flashed in her mind, his calm eyes, his quiet strength. A wave of shame washed over her. Her impetuousness had jeopardized everything, him, the town. They forced her onto her own horse and led her away from the ridge, deeper into the trackless expanse. The sun climbed, a fiery eye scrutinizing her misery. Thirst parched her mouth, and the ropes flayed her skin. Barlow rode silently beside her, his lack of commentary more chilling than any vocal threat. Hours later, as twilight brushed the sky with strokes of amethyst and gold, they reached a hidden encampment tucked within a sheltered ravine. A small fire snapped cheerfully, casting flickering phantoms on the faces of his men. The air, thick with wood smoke and roasting meat, presented a bizarre contrast to her violent capture, a deceptive facade of normalcy. Barlow dismounted, observing as his men yanked her roughly from her horse. Her legs wobbled, and she nearly fell, catching herself on a roughly made table. He indicated a crude stool near the fire. "Sit." She stood her ground, defiance smoldering in her eyes. "What is it you want, Barlow?" He sighed, feigning weary patience. "I want what is rightfully mine, Cassidy, the thing you so carelessly absconded with." He circled her, a wolf assessing its prey. "That land, and the fortune it conceals. I am aware of the map, Cassidy. Do not insult my intelligence by feigning ignorance." Cassidy remained mute, denying him the satisfaction of a response. Let him strut and posture she would not crack easily. He halted before her, his face mere inches away. His breath reeked of whiskey laced with something metallic, unsettling. You see, Cassidy, you misunderstood our arrangement. It was never solely about the land. It was about the dominion it represented. That silver will render me invulnerable. I will rule this territory, and everyone within, including your precious Silver Creek. He spat the town's name as if it were poison. They believe they can defy me. They will be disabused of that notion, starting with you. His fingers clamped on her arm, his grip agonizing. Reveal its location, Cassidy. Point it out on the map. Make this easy. Go choke on it, she rasped, her voice raw but resolute. His eyes narrowed to slits. Stubbornness is a luxury you cannot afford, Cassidy, particularly for a woman. He released her arm and signaled to one of his men. Provide her with food and water. We would not want her expiring not yet. The man produced a plate of greasy beans and a dented tin cup of water. Cassidy regarded it with suspicion. Was it poisoned? Was this an elaborate game? She forced herself to swallow a mouthful of the beans, her ravenous hunger eclipsing her hesitation. The water possessed a metallic tang, but she drank it all the same, desperate to slake her thirst. As night deepened, the fire dwindled, painting long, macabre shadows that cavorted around the camp. Barlow remained by the fire, cradling a whiskey bottle, his gaze fixed on her. He offered no words, no movement, yet his presence was a perpetual, suffocating pressure. Cassidy huddled against the encroaching chill, the ropes biting into her flesh, her body throbbing from her mistreatment. She conjured Noah's image again, his level gaze, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Did he seek her out? Did he even care? Perhaps she was a fool to have placed her faith in him, in the possibility of a fresh beginning. Barlow straightened abruptly and approached her. He knelt, his face close. You know, Cassidy, he murmured, his tone dangerous. I always admired your grit. Such a pity to see it squandered. He extended a hand and traced a line down her cheek, his touch triggering a shudder of disgust. Yield to my demands, and I vow to make it swift. No one else need be harmed. Cassidy met his gaze, her eyes blazing with defiance. You imagine you can break me, Barlow? You think you inspire fear? I have weathered storms far worse than you. A cheerless laugh escaped him. Have you, Cassidy? Truly? You have yet to face me when I am bereft of all inhibitions. And mark my words, Cassidy, regarding that silver, I am unburdened by such constraints. He rose and returned to the fire, leaving her enveloped in darkness, the weight of his menace palpable. She shut her eyes, focusing on Noah's face, clinging to the hope that somehow he would discover her, that somehow she would endure. Yet, in the deepest recesses of her heart, a frigid dread took root. She was ensnared, isolated, at the mercy of a callous man who would stop at nothing to achieve his aims. And she knew, with bone-chilling certainty, that her spirit, her defiance, might prove insufficient to secure her survival. Showdown at Barlow's camp, the desert wind buffeted Noah, his duster snapping like a cracked whip. Sage mingled with the coppery stench clinging to the air. He tracked Barlow's passage. Deep ruts carved by wagon wheels, a brutal scar slashed across the ochre landscape. Each splintered branch, each displaced stone whispered of Barlow's heedless march, his avaricious hunger for the land. Grit stung Noah's gums, a constant reminder of the dust storm Barlow threatened to unleash upon Silver Creek. He pressed his horse onward, a glacial resolve hardening his spirit against the tremor of fear in his belly. The camp, a boil on the face of the desert. Canvas tents sprawled haphazardly. A bonfire spewed greasy smoke, staining the twilight sky. Men lounged with rifles, exuding a crude dominance that mocked Silver Creek's quiet dignity. Noah dismounted, securing his horse behind a rocky outcrop, its breath pluming in the cool air. He verified his rifle, its familiar heft a small solace against the looming threat. Deliberate, measured, he approached, each footfall a percussive challenge on the stony ground. Barlow, back turned, nursed a whiskey bottle beside the flames. The firelight, a capricious artist, painted his features in severe chiaroscuro, amplifying the ruthlessness etched there. "You've wandered far from your jurisdiction, Sheriff," Barlow rumbled, his voice carried on the breeze. He offered no further acknowledgement of Noah's presence. Noah halted, a few feet separating them, a deliberate buffer of rising tension. "This ends now, Barlow." Barlow chuckled, a grating, mirthless sound. He finally pivoted, eyes gleaming like pyrite in the firelight. "Ends? This is Genesis, Sheriff. Witness the forging of an empire." He swept his hand, encompassing the ramshackle camp and its armed occupants. "A little lie incentive is all it requires, plus control of the water." "Water is a shared resource, Barlow, not a personal spoil." Noah's voice was level, but a tempest of fury raged within him. Images flashed. Silver Creek's withered fields, the hollow-eyed despair of its farmers. Barlow tossed back a mouthful of whiskey, the amber liquid flashing like liquid gold. "Sentimentality is a liability in this domain, Sheriff. Water translates to power, and I intend to wield it." He paused, his gaze hardening into obsidian. "Where is she, Noah? Where's Cassidy?" Noah's grip tightened on his rifle. "She's not yours to use as leverage." "Everything is negotiable," Barlow sneered. "Land, water, women, they're all currency. And she possesses something I desire. A map, the linchpin to this entire territory. She doesn't have it. A lie, a desperate bluff, a wager for time." Suspicion contorted Barlow's features, a darkening storm. "Don't underestimate my intelligence, Sheriff. I know she has it. And I will acquire it, by any means necessary." He gestured, and his men encircled Noah, leveling their rifles. "Hand her over, and perhaps, just perhaps, you'll walk away from this alive." Noah stood firm, spine rigid, gaze unflinching. "If you want her, you'll have to come through me." The air thickened, charged and oppressive, like the prelude to a lightning strike. The only sound, the fire's ravenous crackle and the rasping breaths of the encircling men. The fulcrum, duty versus longing, the letter of the law versus the dictates of the heart. Noah knew his path. He had sworn an oath to defend Silver Creek, a promise that included Cassidy even at the cost of everything. "So be it," Barlow decreed, his voice a honed blade. He signaled, "Take him down." A shout ripped through the air, just as the men surged forward. "Barlow, you craven cur!" Every head snapped around. Cassidy stood at the edge of the camp, defiant, dirt smudging her face, fury blazing in her eyes. She had freed herself, her slight frame belying her surprising nimbleness. Rage contorted Barlow's face. "Cassidy, return here now." She ignored him, her gaze locked onto Noah. "Don't let him triumph, Noah. Don't let him steal everything." Then, in a move that stunned them all, she darted forward, snatched a burning brand from the fire, and hurled it toward Barlow. The flaming wood struck his chest, igniting his shirt. He roared, stumbling, clawing at the searing fabric. The sudden pandemonium fractured the tension, providing Noah his opening. He raised his rifle, dropping one of Barlow's men with a single shot. The camp erupted in gunfire. Bullets sliced through the air, kicking up dust and tearing splinters from wood. Noah moved with practiced savagery, felling one assailant after another. But the odds were insurmountable. A searing pain ripped through his shoulder, a bullet's jagged kiss. He bit back a groan, focusing on Cassidy, weaving through the chaos, trying to reach him. Barlow, shirt smoldering, face twisted into a mask of pure hate, bulldozed through his men. He seized Cassidy, dragging her close, his hand clamping over her mouth. "Silence," he bellowed, his voice ragged. "Everyone, cease fire, or the girl dies." The shooting ceased. Only the fire's roar and Cassidy's muffled sobs filled the void. Noah lowered his rifle, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. He had failed. Barlow had recaptured her. "Now, Sheriff," Barlow purred, malice gleaming in his eyes. "Drop your weapon and tell me where the map is concealed." Noah hesitated, his gaze locked on Cassidy's. Fear shone in her eyes, but beneath it, a spark of hope, a silent plea. He knew his course. He dropped his rifle, the clatter echoing in the sudden stillness. "The map is beyond your reach," Noah whispered. "You will never possess it." Barlow tightened his grip, his fingers digging into Cassidy's arm. "You're a fool, Sheriff, a sentimental fool, and sentimentality will be your undoing." He raised his hand, signaling his men. "Eliminate him." But as the men advanced, a fresh sound resonated through the camp. The earth trembled beneath the thunder of approaching hooves, growing louder, closer with each second. A dust cloud materialized on the horizon, swelling, racing towards them. Silver Creek was riding to its sheriff's aid. A new beginning the dust stilled, blanketing not only the cracked earth but also the oppressive rain that had held Silver Creek captive. Barlow was a husk, his avaricious dominion collapsing around him like a poorly constructed dam. The battle had been a raw, desperate struggle, a razor's-edge walk between life and death, yet the soul of Silver Creek, kindled by Cassidy's spirit and stoked by Noah's steadfastness, had eclipsed any weapon Barlow could. Command. A cheer ripped through the air, a ragged, joyous sound that climbed the canyon walls, echoing off the stone as if the very landscape were celebrating liberation. It began, tentatively, a relieved yelp from Martha at the edge of the gathering, then blossomed into a resounding chorus of deliverance and triumph as townsfolk absorbed the reality. The nightmare had ended. They surged forward, a tide of humanity engulfing Noah, their faces etched with gratitude and disbelief. He felt slaps on the back, heard voices thick with emotion offering thanks and praise. Yet his gaze swept the crowd, his heart a needle pointing unerringly in one direction. He spotted her near the perimeter, bathed in the amber hues of the setting sun. Cassidy stood slightly removed, her face ashen, her eyes wide with lingering trauma. The tattered remains of her wedding dress, now a badge of defiance rather than a symbol of broken vows, stirred gently in the breeze. He cut through the throng, disregarding the accolades, his sole focus fixed on her. "Cassidy," he rasped, his voice thick. Her eyes met his. Instantly, the celebratory din receded, the faces blurred into insignificance, leaving only them, two souls tempered in the forge of fear and aspiration. "It's over, Noah," she breathed, her voice trembling like a leaf. He reached out, his hand gently cradling her cheek. "It is." The contact sparked, an electric current igniting an ember that had been glowing within him for weeks. He'd resisted it, denied it, buried it beneath layers of duty and obligation, but it persisted, undeniable, consuming. I quay. He swallowed, the words catching in his throat. I was terrified of losing you. A wave of understanding washed over her features. You weren't going to lose me, Noah. Not while I had you fighting at my side. He drew her close, his arms encircling her, holding her tightly. He could feel her trembling, but also the fortitude within her, the resilience that had captivated him from their first encounter. Thank you, he murmured into her hair. For everything. She tilted her head back, her gaze searching his. There's nothing to thank me for. You rescued me, Noah. You rescued us all. He shook his head. You rescued yourself, Cassidy. You showed us what it meant to rise up and confront tyranny. The celebration churned around them, yet within their small bubble there was only quiet. The air thrummed with unspoken longings, with emotions long suppressed. He knew he could no longer keep them chained. Cassidy, he began again, his voice steadier. I know this isn't the time or the place, but I can't keep it locked inside any longer. He paused, inhaling deeply. I'm in love with you. The words hung suspended between them, delicate yet potent. He scrutinized her face, searching for any hint of refusal, of uncertainty. He saw only a reflection of his own passions, a mirror of the love that had taken root between them. A slow smile blossomed on her face, illuminating her features, making her even more captivating. I think I'm in love with you too, Sheriff. A wave of relief crashed over him, so intense it nearly buckled his knees. He lowered his head, his lips brushing against hers, a tentative, hesitant kiss that spoke volumes. It was a caress of gratitude, of yearning, of faith in a future they could forge together. As their lips met, the shouts of the town faded into a distant drone. The world narrowed, centering on the warmth of her touch, the velvet softness of her lips. He deepened the kiss, channeling all his pent-up feelings into it, conveying everything he couldn't articulate. When they finally parted, breathless, flushed, the world seemed brighter, the air sweeter. He gazed into her eyes and beheld not just love, but a shared resolve, a commitment to building a new existence. What happens now? She whispered. He took her hand, his fingers interlacing with hers. Now, we rebuild, we heal, and we decide what our future holds. The Silver Creek celebration stretched into the night. People danced and sang, sharing stories and laughter under the stars. Noah and Cassidy remained close, watching the festivities from the sheriff's office porch. Later, with the moon high overhead, casting elongated shadows across the town, Noah turned to Cassidy. Marry me, he proposed, the words straightforward and earnest. Her eyes widened, and a tear snaked down her cheek, glistening in the moonlight. Yes, she whispered, her voice filled with profound emotion. Yes, I will. The following morning dawned crisp and clear, an ideal day for fresh starts. The town square buzzed with activity, all eager to witness the union of their sheriff and the woman who had aided in their salvation. Martha had located a fragment of pristine white lace, draping it over Cassidy's shoulders, an impromptu veil lending an air of grace to her simple attire. Judge Abernathy, appearing remarkably sober, officiated the ceremony. As Noah and Cassidy exchanged vows, their voices trembled with emotion. He pledged to protect her, to cherish her, to love her for all his days. She vowed to stand by his side, to support him, to build a home with him in Silver Creek. When the judge declared them husband and wife, a cheer erupted from the crowd, even more thunderous than the previous night. Noah swept Cassidy into his arms, kissing her deeply as the town showered them with flowers and congratulations. As the celebration continued, Noah surveyed the faces of those he had sworn to safeguard. He saw hope rekindled, a strengthened sense of community. He knew that Silver Creek had been irrevocably altered, yet it was also more resilient and unified. He glanced down at Cassidy, her hand secure in his. She smiled back, her eyes radiating love and joy. He knew he had found his true north, not only in Silver Creek but in her embrace. He knew that together they could weather any storm, overcome any hurdle. They were a team, a partnership, a love story etched in the grit and dust of the Wild West. Their story, an enduring testament to the power of hope and love, was just beginning to unfold. Water coursed freely once more in Silver Creek, nurturing the land and sustaining its inhabitants. The desert, once a symbol of hardship, began to flourish, a vibrant testament to life's resilience and the strength of community. And at the heart of it all, Noah and Cassidy stood, a beacon of hope, their love a testament to the indomitable spirit of the West.